What if I told you that the moment you stop trying to fit in is the exact moment your life begins to transform? I know that sounds counterintuitive. We've been programmed since childhood to blend in, to color inside the lines, to be careful about standing out too much. But here's what I've discovered after decades of working with people from all walks of life. The ones who change the world, the ones who find true fulfillment, the ones who leave a lasting impact are never the ones who played it safe by copying others. They're the ones who had the courage to be authentically, unapologetically themselves. Let me tell you about a conversation I had years ago that changed everything for me. I was sitting with a young artist who was in tears because her work wasn't selling. She showed me her paintings, and they were technically perfect, beautiful, really, but something was missing. When I asked her who her influences were, she rattled off 5 famous artists whose styles she was trying to emulate. And there it was. The problem wasn't her skill. The problem was that she had buried her own voice so deep under layers of imitation that she couldn't even hear it anymore. I asked her a simple question. What would you paint if you knew no one would ever see it? What would you create if approval didn't matter? 3 months later, she sent me a photo of her first original piece. It was raw. It was different. It was unmistakably hers. And it sold within a week. Here's the truth that nobody wants to hear. When you spend your life copying others, you become a second-rate version of someone else instead of a first-rate version of yourself. Think about that for a moment. You have something inside you that has never existed before in the history of humanity. Your combination of experiences, perspectives, talents, and quirks is completely unique. But most people never tap into that originality because they're too busy looking around to see what everyone else is doing. The world doesn't need more copies. The world needs originals. And I'm not talking about being different for the sake of being different. I'm talking about the kind of authenticity that comes from deep within, from that place inside you that knows who you really are, when all the masks come off. You see, when you're truly original, when you're operating from your authentic self, something magical happens. You stop competing because there's no competition. How can anyone compete with you being you? They can't. They can only try to copy you, and by then, you've already moved on to the next expression of your authentic self. Have you ever noticed how the most influential people in history were never the ones who followed the crowd? Martin Luther King Jr. didn't look around and say, well, everyone else is accepting segregation, so I guess I should too. Steve Jobs didn't create Apple products by copying what IBM was doing. Maya Angelou didn't become one of the greatest poets of our time by writing like everyone else. They tapped into something deeper. They trusted their inner voice even when it contradicted everything the world was telling them. But here's where it gets really interesting. When you dare to be original, when you dare to express your authentic self, something happens that you might not expect. People start copying you, and that's okay. In fact, that's more than okay. That's confirmation that you're onto something real. Let them copy. Let them try to replicate what you're doing. Because here's the secret. They can copy your actions, they can copy your style, they can even copy your words, but they can never copy your essence. They can never copy the unique combination of spirit and experience and perspective that makes you, you. I remember when I first started teaching these principles, people would come up to me after seminars and say, Wayne, what if someone steals my ideas? And I would always respond the same way, let them try. Because an idea without the authentic energy behind it is just noise. When you're operating from your true self, from your source, your work carries a frequency that cannot be duplicated. People can sense authenticity, they can feel it, and no matter how well someone copies your surface actions, they can never replicate that. Think about this for a moment. What are you holding back right now because you're afraid it's too different? What idea have you shelved because you looked around and nobody else was doing it? What dream have you abandoned because it didn't fit into the conventional path? That's exactly the thing you need to pursue. That's exactly the voice you need to amplify. I've watched this pattern play out thousands of times. Someone discovers their authentic voice, their original expression, and they're terrified. They think, this is too weird. This is too different. People won't get it. But then they gather their courage and put it out into the world anyway. And what happens? Some people don't get it. That's true. Some people will never get it. But the right people, the people who need what you have to offer, they find you like metal to a magnet. Because authenticity is magnetic. Originality is magnetic. Here's what most people don't understand about being original. It's not about trying to be different. It's about stopping trying to be the same. There's a huge difference. When you try to be different, you're still operating from the outside in. You're still looking at what everyone else is doing and then deliberately doing the opposite. That's not freedom. That's just another form of letting others control you. True originality comes from the inside out. It comes from getting so connected to your authentic self that you stop worrying about what anyone else is doing altogether. Let me share something personal with you. Early in my career, I was invited to speak at a major conference alongside some of the biggest names in personal development. I prepared this elaborate presentation, complete with slides and statistics and quotes from famous philosophers. I was trying to sound important, trying to sound like what I thought a serious speaker should sound like. The night before the conference, I couldn't sleep. Something felt off. So I threw away my entire presentation and decided to just speak from my heart, to share the simple truths I discovered through my own struggles and breakthroughs. No pretense, no trying to impress anyone, just me, being me. That talk changed my career, not because it was perfect, but because it was real. When you're authentic, when you're original, you give others permission to be the same. That's the real power of staying true to yourself. You become a lighthouse for other people who are tired of pretending, who are exhausted from trying to fit in, who are ready to stop being a carbon copy and start being an original. Your courage to be yourself ignites courage in others. But I want to be honest with you about something. Staying original isn't always easy. There will be times when the pressure to conform feels overwhelming. There will be moments when you look at what everyone else is doing and think, maybe I should just do that too. It would be so much simpler. The voices of doubt will get loud. Your family might not understand. Your friends might think you've lost your mind. The market might not immediately reward you. And in those moments, you have to decide, are you going to trust the authentic voice within you, or are you going to let fear push you back into the crowd? I'll tell you what I've learned. Every single time I've trusted my authentic self, even when it scared me, even when it made no logical sense, something greater unfolded. Every single time I've tried to copy someone else or conform to expectations, I've felt miserable, and the results have been mediocre at best. Your inner guidance system knows the way. Your authentic self knows what wants to emerge through you. The question is, are you listening? Here's something that might surprise you. Being original doesn't mean you have to reinvent the wheel. It doesn't mean you can't learn from others or be inspired by others. Of course you can. Of course you should. But there's a difference between learning from someone and losing yourself in trying to become them. When you study others, you're gathering tools and insights, but you use those tools to build your own unique creation, not to replicate theirs. Think of it like cooking. You can learn techniques from master chefs. You can understand flavor profiles and cooking methods. But when you create your own dish, you're not trying to make an exact copy of theirs. You're using what you've learned to express your own palette, your own creativity, your own vision. That's how you should approach everything in life. Learn from the masters, but create from your soul. And here's the beautiful paradox. The more authentic you become, the more universal your message becomes. When you dig deep into your specific truth, into your unique experience, you somehow tap into something that resonates with everyone. Because beneath all our surface differences, we all share the same core human experiences. We all know what it feels like to be afraid. We all know what it feels like to love. We all know what it feels like to struggle and to hope and to dream. When you speak from that deep, authentic place within you, you speak to that same place in others. I want you to imagine something with me. Imagine a world where everyone stopped trying to copy everyone else. Imagine a world where every person fully expressed their authentic gifts, their unique perspective, their original voice. Can you see how much richer that world would be? Can you see how many more problems would get solved? How much more beauty would get created? How much more innovation would emerge? That world starts with you. It starts with your decision, right now, to stop playing small and start being fully yourself. Let the critics talk. Let the copycats copy. Let the doubters doubt. None of that matters. What matters is that you stay true to the voice within you. What matters is that you honor the unique expression that wants to come through you. What matters is that when you get to the end of your life, you can say, I lived as myself. I didn't waste my precious time trying to be someone else. You know what the saddest thing in the world is? It's not failure. It's never trying. It's going to your grave with your original song still inside you. It's spending your entire life being a mediocre copy of someone else when you could have been a magnificent original. Don't let that be you. Don't let fear cheat the world out of your unique contribution. Here's my challenge to you, and I mean this from the deepest place in my heart. Starting right now, today, make one choice that honors your authentic self. Just one. Maybe it's finally starting that project you've been putting off because it's too unconventional. Maybe it's speaking up in a meeting with an idea that's different from everyone else's. Maybe it's creating art that doesn't look like anyone else's. Maybe it's writing in your own voice instead of trying to sound like that author you admire. Whatever it is, do it. Take that step. Honor that inner voice. And when you do, pay attention to how you feel. Notice the energy that moves through you when you're being authentic versus when you're trying to fit in. Your body knows the difference. Your spirit knows the difference. That feeling of aliveness, of rightness, of coming home to yourself, that's your compass. Follow it. Remember this. You are not here to be a copy. You are here to be an original. The universe doesn't make duplicates. Every snowflake is unique. Every fingerprint is unique. Every person is unique. That includes you. You have something to offer that no one else can offer in quite the same way. The question is, will you have the courage to offer it? Stay original. Stay true. Stay authentic. Let your unique light shine so brightly that others can't help but notice. And when they try to copy you, smile and keep moving forward, keep evolving, keep deepening into your authentic self. Because that's a race they can never win. The only race that matters is the one between who you are and who you're capable of becoming. Your originality is not just a gift to yourself. It's a gift to the world. We need what only you can give. We need your voice, your vision, your unique expression of the divine. Don't rob us of that. Don't play small. Don't hide. The world has enough copies. What the world needs is you, the real you, the original you. So go be that, fully, unapologetically, magnificently. And watch what happens when you finally give yourself permission to shine as only you can shine. You know what keeps me up at night? It's not the questions I answered in my 20s. It's the ones I ran from. The ones I buried under busyness, under achievement, under the next promotion, the next relationship, the next distraction. And if you're honest with yourself right now, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Because those questions, they never went away. They just got louder. Let me tell you something that changed everything for me. I was 43 years old, sitting in my car in a parking lot, and I had what most people would call a successful life. Good career, nice house, all the markers of having made it. But I was crying, actually crying, because a question I'd shoved down 20 years earlier had just kicked down the door of my consciousness and demanded an answer. The question was simple, brutal, honest. Who are you when nobody's watching? Who are you when you strip away the titles, the roles, the masks you wear to make other people comfortable? I had avoided that question in my 20s because answering it meant I might have to change everything. And change is terrifying when you're building a life. So I did what most of us do. I got busy. I convinced myself that doing more meant being more. I told myself I'd figure out the deep stuff later, after I got established, after I proved myself, after I had enough money or time or whatever excuse felt convenient that day. But here's what nobody tells you about avoided questions. They don't expire. They don't fade away just because you ignore them. They hibernate. They wait. And when they come back with interest, with urgency, with a force that makes you wonder why you ever thought you could outrun them in the first place. Think about this for a moment. What question did you avoid in your 20s? Was it about your purpose, your relationships, your values? Was it about whether you were living your life or performing someone else's script? Was it about forgiveness, about healing, about the parts of yourself you learned to hide because they didn't fit the image you were trying to project? I've talked to thousands of people over the years, and I can tell you this with absolute certainty. The questions we avoid in our youth become the crises we face in our middle age. The career you chose to please your parents becomes the golden handcuffs you can't escape at 40. The relationship you stayed in because you were afraid of being alone becomes the marriage that slowly suffocates you. The dreams you postponed become the regrets that haunt you. There was a woman who came up to me after a talk in Seattle. She was probably in her late 40s, dressed impeccably, looking like she had it all together. She waited until everyone else had left, and then she said something I'll never forget. She said, "I spent my 20s becoming who everyone expected me to be, and now I don't know who I actually am." The question I avoided was simple. What do I actually want? Not what looks good, not what makes sense, not what's practical. What do I want? And you know what the tragedy is? She was still avoiding it. Even standing there, tears in her eyes, she was still looking for me to give her permission, to tell her it was okay to finally ask herself that question. But I couldn't give her that permission. Nobody could. That permission had to come from within her. It had to come from the part of her that was tired of performing, tired of pretending, tired of living a life that looked right but felt hollow. Here's what I've learned. The universe has a funny way of bringing you back to the lessons you need to learn. You can run from a question in your 20s, but it'll be waiting for you in your 30s. Ignore it there, and it'll ambush you in your 40s. Keep running, and it'll become the crisis that forces you to your knees in your 50s. The question doesn't change. Only the stakes get higher. So what are these questions we avoid? Let me share some of the most common ones, the ones I see over and over again. The first one is this: am I living authentically, or am I living to meet expectations? This is the big one, the mother of all avoided questions. Because answering it honestly might mean admitting that the life you've built, the identity you've crafted, the person you've become is more about approval than authenticity. I remember talking to a lawyer who'd made partner at 35. On paper, he'd won. But he sat in my office and told me he'd never wanted to be a lawyer. He'd wanted to be a teacher. But teaching didn't pay enough, didn't have enough prestige, didn't make his father proud, so he became a lawyer. And every year, the golden handcuffs got tighter. Every year, the question he'd avoided in his 20s got harder to face. Am I living my life or someone else's dream? The second question is about relationships. Do I love this person, or do I love the idea of not being alone? This one destroys more marriages than infidelity ever could. Because we make decisions in our 20s based on fear, based on timelines, based on what we think we're supposed to do by a certain age. And then we wake up at 40 next to someone we barely know, someone we chose not because they lit up our soul, but because they were there, they were safe, they checked the boxes. What if I told you that the relationship struggles you're having now are just that avoided question coming back around? What if the disconnect you feel isn't about your partner at all, but about the fact that you never asked yourself the hard question before you made the commitment? Do I actually want this, or am I just afraid of the alternative? The third question is about purpose. What am I here to do, and am I doing it? This is the one that creates the midlife crisis, the existential dread, the Sunday night anxiety that no amount of success can quiet. Because deep down, you know, if you're on your path or if you're on someone else's, if your work matters to you or if it's just a means to an end, if you're contributing something meaningful or just going through the motions. I met a man who'd built a successful construction company, employed 50 people, made good money, respected in his community, but he told me he felt dead inside because what he really wanted to do was write. He'd wanted to write since he was 15 years old. But writing didn't seem practical, didn't seem like a real career, so he put it aside. He told himself he'd do it later, after he built something stable. 30 years later, he still hadn't written a word. And that question, what am I here to do, had turned into a weight he carried every single day. Here's the thing about these avoided questions. They don't just affect you. They ripple out into everything you touch. Your relationships suffer because you're not fully present. Your work suffers because you're not fully engaged. Your health suffers because you're carrying the stress of living a lie, even if it's a sophisticated, well-decorated, socially acceptable lie. And let me tell you something else. The longer you avoid the question, the harder it becomes to answer. Not because the question gets more complicated, but because you've built a whole life around not answering it. You've got responsibilities now. You've got people depending on you. You've got an identity to maintain. The cost of change feels astronomical. But here's what I want you to understand. The cost of not changing is even higher. It's your peace of mind. It's your authenticity. It's your chance to live a life that actually means something to you. And that cost doesn't get paid all at once. It gets paid in small increments, day after day, year after year, until you wake up one morning and realize you've spent your entire life being someone you're not. So what do you do when these questions come back? Because they are back, aren't they? You're listening to this right now because something inside you knows it's time to stop running. You're ready, even if you're scared. You're ready, even if you don't know what answering honestly will require of you. First, you have to get honest. Brutally, uncomfortably honest with yourself. Not with your therapist, not with your best friend, not with me, with yourself. In the quiet moments when nobody's watching, when you can't perform or pretend or rationalize, you have to sit with the question, and let the real answer surface, even if it terrifies you. I want you to try something right now. Close your eyes for a moment if you're somewhere safe to do that. Take a deep breath and ask yourself, what question have I been avoiding? Just sit with it. Don't judge it. Don't try to answer it yet. Just acknowledge it. Give it space. Let it breathe. The question might be about your marriage. It might be about your career. It might be about the relationship with your parents that you've never healed. It might be about your health, your finances, your spirituality. It might be about the dream you gave up or the person you used to be before life convinced you to be someone else. Whatever it is, the first step is acknowledgement. You can't heal what you won't acknowledge. You can't change what you keep pretending doesn't exist. So acknowledge the question. Say it out loud if you need to. Write it down. Stop letting it live in the shadows of your consciousness. Second, you have to understand that answering these questions doesn't mean your whole life has to blow up. I know that's the fear. If I admit I'm in the wrong career, I'll have to quit my job and start over. If I admit I married for the wrong reasons, I'll have to get divorced. If I admit I've been living inauthentically, I'll lose everyone I know. But that's not how it works. Answering the question is just the beginning. It's not the action itself. It's the clarity that allows you to make conscious choices instead of unconscious reactions. Maybe you realize you're in the wrong career, but instead of quitting tomorrow, you start taking steps toward a transition. You take a class, you build a skill, you have a conversation. You start moving in the direction of authenticity, even if it's slow, even if it's scary. Or maybe you realize your marriage isn't what you thought it was, but instead of ending it immediately, you bring honesty into it. You have the real conversation you've been avoiding. You invite your partner to join you in building something authentic instead of just maintaining something comfortable. Sometimes that saves the marriage, sometimes it doesn't. But either way, you're living in truth instead of pretense. Third, you have to make peace with the fact that other people might not understand. They might judge you. They might be confused by your changes. They might prefer the old version of you, the one who was easier to understand, easier to categorize, easier to control. And that's okay. Their discomfort is not your responsibility. Your authenticity is not up for a vote. I'll tell you a story. There was a time in my life when I had to make a choice between staying in a situation that looked good and stepping into something that felt true, and people thought I was crazy. They thought I was throwing away security, stability, everything I'd worked for. But I knew something they didn't. I knew that security built on a foundation of inauthenticity is just another kind of prison. And you know what happened? Some people fell away. Some relationships ended. Some doors closed. But other doors opened, better doors. Doors that led to a life that actually felt like mine. Relationships that were based on who I actually was, not who I was pretending to be. Work that mattered, purpose that resonated, peace that wasn't dependent on maintaining an image. Fourth, you have to commit to the process, not just the outcome. Answering these avoided questions isn't a one-time event. It's an ongoing practice. It's a commitment to continue asking yourself the hard questions, to continue choosing authenticity over comfort, to continue growing even when growth is painful. Because here's the truth. You're not going to get it perfect. You're going to backslide. You're going to have moments of doubt. You're going to wonder if you made the right choice. That's part of the process. What matters is that you keep returning to the truth. You keep choosing honesty. You keep moving toward the life that's actually yours. And finally, you have to understand that it's never too late. I don't care if you're 40, 50, 60, 70. It's never too late to answer the questions you avoided. It's never too late to course correct. It's never too late to choose authenticity. The best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is now. I think about that woman in Seattle sometimes. I wonder if she ever gave herself permission to ask what she actually wanted. I wonder if she's still performing or if she found the courage to step into her truth. And I think about all the people just like her, just like you maybe, who are standing at this crossroads right now. You can keep running from the question. You can keep telling yourself you'll deal with it later, after this project, after the kids are grown, after you have more money saved, after things settle down. But things never settle down. Life doesn't pause to let you catch up. The question will keep following you, keep getting louder, keep demanding an answer, or you can turn around and face it right now, today. Not perfectly, not with all the answers figured out, just with honesty, with courage, with a willingness to finally stop running and start living. Because here's what I know to be true. The questions you avoided in your 20s aren't back to punish you. They're back to free you. They're back because you're finally ready to hear the answer. You're finally strong enough to handle the truth. You're finally brave enough to make the changes that truth might require. Your soul has been trying to get your attention for years, maybe decades, through anxiety, through depression, through that vague sense of dissatisfaction that no amount of success can cure, through the relationships that don't quite work, the work that doesn't quite satisfy, the life that looks right but feels wrong. All of it has been pointing back to this moment, to this question, to this choice. So I'm asking you now, what question have you been avoiding? And more importantly, are you finally ready to answer it? Not with your head, not with logic, not with what makes sense or what other people will think, but with your heart, with your truth, with the voice inside you that's been whispering or maybe screaming, trying to be heard. The life you're meant to live is on the other side of that answer. The peace you've been searching for is on the other side of that answer. The version of yourself that you catch glimpses of sometimes, the one that feels authentic and alive and true, that person is on the other side of that answer. You've spent enough time running, you've spent enough time pretending, you've spent enough time building a life that looks good instead of one that feels true. The questions are back, and this time, I hope you'll answer them. Not because it's easy, not because it's safe, but because you finally understand that avoiding them has cost you more than facing them ever could. Your soul is calling you home, to yourself, to your truth, to the life that's actually yours. The only question that matters now is whether you're brave enough to answer. You know what breaks my heart? It's seeing people in their 40s walking around like their life is already written, like the best chapters are behind them, like they've somehow missed their chance. I see it in their eyes, that quiet resignation, that feeling of, well, this is it. And I want to grab them by the shoulders and say, wake up right now. Because what you think is the end is actually the most extraordinary beginning you could ever imagine. Let me tell you something that might shock you. Your 40s aren't the decline, they're not the sunset. They're the dawn of the most powerful, most authentic, most magnificent version of yourself. And if you're sitting there thinking it's too late for you, thinking you've missed your window, thinking the world has passed you by, I need you to hear this. You're not late to anything. You're right on time. You're exactly where you need to be. I remember talking to a woman once, beautiful soul, 43 years old. She came up to me after one of my talks with tears streaming down her face. She said, Wayne, I wasted my 20s and 30s trying to please everyone. My parents wanted me to be a lawyer, so I became one. Society said I should get married and have kids by 30, so I did. And now I'm 43 and I don't even know who I am. It's too late for me to find out, isn't it? And I looked at her, really looked at her, and I said, too late, my dear? You're just getting started. Think about this for a moment. What were you doing in your 20s? If you're honest with yourself, really honest, you were probably stumbling around in the dark, pretending you knew what you were doing. You were trying on different masks, seeing which one fit, which one got you approval, which one made people like you. Your 20s were about survival. Your 30s were about proving yourself. But your 40s? Your 40s are about finally coming home to yourself. Here's what nobody tells you. The first 4 decades of your life are basically a training ground. You're learning what doesn't work. You're discovering what drains you. You're finding out who you're not. And that's not failure. That's wisdom. That's the most valuable education you could ever receive. Because now, right now, you have something you never had before. You have clarity. You have perspective. You have the kind of knowing that only comes from actually living. I spent my 20s and 30s running around like a headless chicken, chasing achievement, chasing approval, chasing some imaginary finish line that kept moving further away. I was so busy trying to become somebody that I forgot I already was somebody. It wasn't until my 40s that I finally stopped long enough to ask the most important question of my life. Not what do I want to achieve, but who do I want to be? And that's the shift that changes everything. See, when you're younger, you're focused on doing. What should I do with my life? What career should I choose? What goals should I set? But in your 40s, if you're paying attention, you start to realize that life isn't about doing, it's about being. It's about becoming the truest, most authentic version of yourself. And that journey, my friend, that journey is just beginning. You want to know why your 40s are so powerful? Because you finally have the courage to disappoint people. Let me say that again. You finally have the courage to disappoint people. You're done living for everyone else's expectations. You're done twisting yourself into shapes that don't fit just to get approval. You're done saying yes when everything inside you is screaming no. You've spent enough years being who you thought you should be. Now you get to be who you actually are. I had a friend who at 47 quit his job as a corporate executive to become a high school teacher. Everyone thought he was crazy. His wife worried about the money. His parents were disappointed. His colleagues couldn't understand it. But you know what he said to me? He said, "Wayne, for the first time in my life, I wake up excited. For the first time, I'm not checking my email with dread. For the first time, I feel alive." That's what happens when you finally honor who you really are. And here's something else that's beautiful about this time in your life. You stop caring so much about what people think, not in an arrogant way, but in a free way. You realize that most people are so caught up in their own drama, their own fears, their own insecurities, that they're barely thinking about you at all. And the few who are judging you, they're usually the ones who are too afraid to make their own changes. Their criticism is just their fear talking. Think about all the things you know now that you didn't know at 25. Think about all the mistakes you've made, all the heartbreaks you've survived, all the failures you've overcome. Each one of those experiences is a gift. Each one taught you something about resilience, about strength, about who you really are beneath all the pretending. You're not starting from scratch in your 40s. You're starting from experience. And that's the most valuable foundation there is. But here's where people get stuck. They look at their 40s and they see limitations. They see age. They see missed opportunities. They see a shrinking window. And I want to challenge that entire way of thinking. Because what if everything you think is a limitation is actually your greatest advantage? What if the fact that you've lived, that you've struggled, that you've failed and gotten back up, what if that's exactly what makes you ready for what's coming next? You know what I love about people in their 40s? They're done with bullshit. They can smell it a mile away. They've been burned enough times to recognize manipulation. They've been disappointed enough times to value authenticity. They've been hurt enough times to cherish genuine connection. And that's not cynicism. That's discernment. That's wisdom. And wisdom is the most powerful force in the universe. I want you to think about something. Who are the people who've had the most impact on your life? Who are the teachers, the mentors, the guides who really transformed you? I'm willing to bet most of them weren't 25-year-olds. They were people who had lived, who had suffered, who had been broken and rebuilt themselves. They were people who had earned their wisdom through experience. That's who you're becoming. That's the power you're stepping into. And let's talk about this idea that you're running out of time. Running out of time for what exactly? To achieve some arbitrary goal that society told you matters? To check off some imaginary list of accomplishments? To prove something to people who aren't even paying attention? That whole race you think you're in, that whole competition, it doesn't exist. It never existed. It's a story you've been telling yourself, and you can choose to tell yourself a different story right now. Here's the truth. The most extraordinary lives I've witnessed, the most inspiring transformations I've seen, they almost always happened in the second half of life. Julia Child didn't publish her first cookbook until she was 49. Laura Ingalls Wilder didn't publish her first Little House book until she was 64. Colonel Sanders was 62 when he franchised KFC. These people weren't late bloomers. They were right on time. They just weren't living by someone else's timeline. And you know what else happens in your 40s? You start to understand that success isn't what you thought it was. It's not the big house or the fancy title or the impressive resume. Success is waking up and liking the person you see in the mirror. Success is living in alignment with your values. Success is having the courage to be authentic even when it costs you. Success is inner peace. And that kind of success, that's something you can create right now, today, at any age. I'm going to tell you something that might make you uncomfortable. Every day you wait to start living authentically is a day you're betraying yourself. Every morning you wake up and play a role that isn't really you. You're choosing fear over love. You're choosing comfort over truth. You're choosing other people's approval over your own soul. And I know that's harsh, but it's also liberating. Because if you're choosing it, that means you can unchoose it. You can make a different choice right now. What if I told you that everything you think you've lost, you haven't actually lost? What if I told you that the dreams you buried, they're not dead, they're just dormant? What if the person you were meant to be is still waiting for you, still possible, still available? What if 43 or 47 or 49 is exactly the perfect time to finally become who you were meant to be all along? You know what holds most people back? It's not their age. It's not their circumstances. It's not even their past mistakes. It's their belief that they're too old, too late, too far behind. It's their story about what's possible for them now. And that story, that limiting, diminishing, dream-killing story, it's just that, a story. And you're the author. You can rewrite it anytime you want. I want you to close your eyes for a moment. Well, keep them open if you're driving, but imagine this. Imagine yourself at 65, looking back on your life. And imagine that you didn't make the changes you know in your heart you need to make. You stayed in the job that drains you. You stayed in the relationship that diminishes you. You kept playing small to make other people comfortable. How does that feel? Really feel into that regret, that wondering what if. That's the only thing you should actually be afraid of. Now imagine the other version. Imagine that at 42 or 46 or 48, you finally said enough. You finally honored the whisper inside you that's been trying to get your attention for years. You finally took the leap. You finally bet on yourself. And at 65, you look back with pride, with joy, with zero regrets, because you had the courage to live your truth. Which version of your future self do you want to meet? Here's something I've learned after decades of working with people, studying consciousness, exploring what it means to live a meaningful life. The universe doesn't care about your age. The universe doesn't have a cutoff date for miracles. The universe doesn't say, sorry, you're 43, you missed your window for transformation. That's a human construct. That's fear talking. The universe only cares about one thing. Are you ready? Are you willing? Are you open? And if you're listening to this right now, if these words are landing in your heart, then you're ready. Maybe you don't feel ready. Maybe you feel scared or uncertain or overwhelmed. But you wouldn't be here if some part of you wasn't ready to step into something bigger. Your soul is calling you forward. And your soul doesn't operate on society's timeline. Your soul operates on divine timing. And divine timing is always, always perfect. You want to know what I think is the greatest tragedy? It's not death. We all die. That's part of the deal. The greatest tragedy is living a half-lived life. It's getting to the end of your days and realizing you never really showed up, you never really tried, you never really let yourself be seen. You played it safe, kept it small, stayed comfortable. And for what? To avoid judgment? To avoid failure? To avoid disappointing people who were probably going to be disappointed anyway? I'm going to challenge you right now. What is the one thing you would do if you knew you couldn't fail? What is the one dream you've been talking yourself out of because you think you're too old? What is the one change you've been avoiding because it feels too scary, too risky, too impossible? Hold that in your mind. Really hold it. Because that thing, that exact thing, that's what you're here to do. That's your calling. That's your purpose, knocking on your door. And I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, but Wayne, you don't understand my situation. I have responsibilities. I have bills. I have people depending on me. I can't just throw caution to the wind and follow my dreams. And you're right. I'm not telling you to be reckless. I'm not telling you to quit your job tomorrow and move to Bali with no plan. But I am telling you to stop using your circumstances as an excuse to abandon yourself. You can honor your responsibilities and honor yourself. You can be practical and be authentic. You can make smart choices and brave choices. It's not one or the other. You can start where you are with what you have and take one small step toward the life that's calling you. Just one step. That's all it takes to begin. And here's what happens when you take that step. The universe meets you. I've seen this happen over and over again. The moment you commit to your authentic path, doors start opening. Opportunities appear. The right people show up. Resources materialize. It's like the universe was just waiting for you to say yes. But you have to take the first step. You have to show up for yourself before the universe can show up for you. Your 40s are the beginning because this is when you finally have the wisdom to know what matters. You've tried the achievement game. You've tried the approval game. You've tried the keeping up with the Joneses game. And if you're honest, those games left you empty. They left you exhausted. They left you wondering if there's more to life than this. And the answer is yes, there is so much more. But you have to be willing to step off the treadmill to discover it. This is your time to ask the big questions. Not what should I do, but who am I meant to be? Not how can I be successful, but how can I be authentic? Not what will make me happy, but what will make me whole. These are the questions that lead to real transformation. These are the questions that change everything. And transformation, real transformation, it doesn't happen overnight. It's not a switch you flip. It's a process. It's a journey. It's a daily practice of choosing truth over comfort, of choosing growth over safety, of choosing yourself over everyone else's expectations. Some days you'll nail it. Some days you'll fall flat on your face, and that's okay. That's part of it. Progress isn't linear. Growth isn't pretty. But every single day that you show up for yourself, you're building a life worth living. I want you to understand something crucial. You are not damaged goods because you're in your 40s. You're not past your prime. You're not over the hill. Those are poisonous cultural messages designed to keep you small, to keep you consuming, to keep you afraid. The truth is, you're just getting to the good part. You're just developing the depth, the wisdom, the strength that makes life truly meaningful. Think about wine. Does wine get worse with age? No, it gets better. It gets richer. It gets more complex, more valuable, more treasured. That's you. You're not declining. You're deepening. You're not fading. You're ripening. You're becoming the vintage version of yourself, and that version is infinitely more interesting than the young, uncertain, trying to figure it all out version you used to be. And let's talk about fear, because I know it's there. I know you're afraid of failing. I know you're afraid of being judged. I know you're afraid of disappointing people or looking foolish or starting over. But here's what I want you to consider. What if you're more afraid of staying stuck than you are of taking a risk? What if the fear of regret is bigger than the fear of failure? What if the pain of not trying is worse than the pain of trying and falling short? Because here's the thing about failure. It's temporary. It's not fatal. It's just information. It's just feedback. Every successful person you admire has failed more times than you can count. The difference is they didn't let failure define them. They didn't let it stop them. They learned from it, adjusted, and kept going. And you can do the same thing. You have that same resilience. You've already proven it by surviving everything you've survived so far. You know what I think is beautiful about getting older? You stop wasting energy on things that don't matter. You stop arguing with people who aren't worth your time. You stop trying to control things you can't control. You stop sweating the small stuff because you finally understand what the big stuff is. And that clarity, that focus, that's your superpower. That's what allows you to create real change, real impact, real meaning in your life. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to give yourself permission. Permission to want something different. Permission to dream again. Permission to believe that your life can be extraordinary even though you're not 25 anymore. Especially because you're not 25 anymore. You've earned this. You've paid your dues. You've learned your lessons. Now it's time to collect on all that wisdom and experience and create something beautiful. And I want you to know that you don't have to have it all figured out. You don't need a perfect plan. You don't need to know exactly how it's all going to work out. You just need to take the next right step. Just the next one. And then the one after that. Trust that the path will reveal itself as you walk it. Trust that you have everything you need inside you right now. Trust that you're being guided, supported, loved by something bigger than yourself. Your 40s aren't the end. They're not even the middle. They're the beginning of the most authentic, most powerful, most purposeful chapter of your life. The chapter where you finally stop performing and start living. The chapter where you finally stop hiding and start shining. The chapter where you finally stop waiting for permission and start giving it to yourself. This is your moment, right now. Not someday, not when conditions are perfect, not when you feel ready, now. Because you'll never feel completely ready. You'll never have complete certainty. You'll never have all the answers, but you have enough. You are enough. And it's time to start acting like you know it. So I'm asking you, what are you going to do with this one wild, precious, irreplaceable life? Are you going to keep playing small? Are you going to keep hiding your light? Are you going to keep waiting for the perfect moment that never comes? Or are you going to finally step into your power? Are you going to finally honor the truth inside you? Are you going to finally become who you were meant to be all along? The world needs you, the real you, not the masked version, not the people-pleasing version, not the safe, sanitized, acceptable version. The world needs your unique gifts, your unique perspective, your unique voice. And you can't share those gifts if you're hiding. You can't fulfill your purpose if you're playing it safe. You can't make the impact you're here to make if you're living someone else's life. Your 40s are just the beginning, because this is when you finally have the courage to begin. This is when you finally have the wisdom to begin. This is when you finally have the readiness to begin. Everything up until now was preparation. Everything up until now was training. Now is when you get to use everything you've learned, everything you've survived, everything you've become to create a life that sets your soul on fire. And 20 years from now, when you're looking back on this moment, I promise you won't regret trying. You won't regret being brave. You won't regret choosing yourself. The only thing you'll regret is if you let fear win, if you let doubt win, if you let the voice that says it's too late win, because that voice is a liar. It's always been a liar, and it's time to stop listening to it. It's not too late. It's not too late to change careers. It's not too late to go back to school. It's not too late to leave the relationship that's killing your spirit. It's not too late to start the business. It's not too late to write the book. It's not too late to move across the country. It's not too late to become who you were meant to be. It's not too late for any of it. The only thing it's too late for is living someone else's life. That ship has sailed. Now it's time to live yours. So take a deep breath. Feel the possibility in this moment. Feel the power that's always been inside you, just waiting to be unleashed. Feel the truth of who you really are, beneath all the conditioning, all the fear, all the limiting beliefs. That truth is still there. It's always been there, and it's ready for you to finally claim it. Your 40s aren't the end of your story. They're the beginning of your best chapter. The chapter you've been preparing for your whole life. The chapter where everything finally makes sense. The chapter where you finally come home to yourself. And that chapter starts right now, today, this moment, with the choice to believe that you're worthy, that you're capable, that you're ready for everything that's calling you forward. So what are you waiting for? Your life is calling. Your purpose is calling. Your authentic self is calling. And it's time to answer. It's time to begin. It's time to step into the magnificent, powerful, extraordinary life that's been waiting for you all along, because you're not too late. You're right on time. And your greatest adventure is just beginning.